We are here with Dr. Glenn Faircloth, who is the new Lorain County JVS superintendent. Dr. Faircloth, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're new here and a lot of people don't know you, and they may not realize you also have a very compelling story that got you here to the JVS.
Okay. Well, I'm from Dayton, Ohio, which is southern Ohio here. Montgomery County is the county that I'm from. Born and raised there. Went to school, had parents there. My mother and father were married when they had me, my sister, and my brother. I come from traditionally a family of three, with a sister and a brother, and of course mom and dad. Somewhere down the line, they split at a very, very young age. In fact, I have no recollection of them ever being married as growing up, but things happen. From there, my mother, she tried to do the best that she could do to raise three kids on her own, but that didn't go so well. I think life threw her different obstacles that she had to overcome. So ultimately, my mother, she became addicted to drugs, and after that, that's when it started and began to affect my brother and sister and I. Ultimately, we ended up going into different foster care. Sometimes we were in group homes, things of that nature. Over the years of that time period, Children's Services, which is the children agency in that area, they often try to put us back with our mother. That's just a natural fit that those agencies would like to see. In the meanwhile, they made contact with my father. They sent certified mail to his resident to see and to also share with him that his kids were in a situation. No response. We never heard anything from him or any other family member for that matter. So ultimately we went back with our mother. Things still began to happen. Things didn't change, so they moved us back out of the home. At that point, it became a situation where the state took us over, and ultimately splitting my brother and sister and myself up. By that time, my sister was pregnant, so she was a teenage mother. So the situation changes with her when you have teenage mothers in foster care. It's a lot more difficult for them to have a home, so they did some other things with her. My brother, my baby brother, he went into a different foster home, and then I went into a foster home. At one point in time, we did get to actually share the same foster home. We left there. At that time, we both went into a group home. He left the group home. He ran away from the group home early. He got back with our biological mother, and then was split again. I stayed in the group home. Ultimately, I then left the group home as well. Actually, I ran away from the group home. I ran away. It was a night that a young boy, who was close to my age at that time, he hung himself in the middle of the night. And it was just really, really hard for me to deal with seeing that. So I ran away from that group home, went over to a friend's house. My friend named was Sean at the time. He lived in the same neighborhood that we grew up with. And his mother knew the different situations and things of that nature that went on. And her heart went out. So at that time, we really began to bond as a family with the Whites, was their last name. Sean White was his name, but mom's name was White. And we bonded. And then we contacted Children's Services. Children's Services moved me out of that situation into another situation. And at that time, it was not a good foster home, and I ran away from there. And I think at that point I was really like at that edge of just like, wow, why me? Why this life? God, please tell me differently. And it come to a point where you get to that edge where actually, and I was about 10 years old, so I actually wish that I died. over those journeys there, going from different group homes, from being homeless and things of that nature, from, eating out of trash cans to going to school, looking dirty, a stinky kid, all these particular things that certainly can damage your self-esteem and your confidence as a young person, and the embarrassment that you had to go through. I ultimately didn't want to live anymore at that young age. And I remember I was sleeping outside in these bushes. We used to have this old mall called the Salem Mall there, and I slept in those bushes. I remember praying and crying to really die, to just, hey, God, take me away from all this. And then, of course, that didn't happen. But when I woke up, I had that epiphany. I had that cleansing, I think. And things changed there. I ultimately went and stayed with a friend for a little while, who's my best friend, Julius. I stayed with him for a little bit. And then the family I talked to you guys about, the Whites, they began the process of trying to get me as well. But I also had another friend, Maurice. His family took me in for a little while until certain things got cleared up. And that was the Kenyans. I stayed with them for a little while. And then ultimately leaving that and going with the Whites, who I call my mom and dad and my brothers and sisters. And along with the Kenyans, Maurice, Jonathan, Shelby, and all of them were my sisters and brothers as well. So I had finally a grounded situation where I was able to focus on schooling and myself, and I did. And I finished school right after high school. I went into the Army. Served 4 years in the United States Army. Did that, got out of the military, played football at Central State University in Wilberforce, Ohio. Stayed there for my master's and my undergrad. But interesting enough, during that time period, Maurice Kenyon, the one family that I told, I saw him in passing. He used to come over the house. He was dealing with some things himself. One day I was in the grocery store. His friend I met in the grocery store, I was like, hey, he was like, have you heard what happened to Maurice? I was like, no, what happened? He shared with me that Maurice had took his life. And it's a very, very dear friend. I was devastated because he was like a brother to me. And then you think back just how, life is never fair for anyone. You kind of play the hand that you're dealt. Some people are holding aces, some people are holding all twos. And sometimes you have to put on that poker face to make people think that you have aces, but eventually it's revealed. And not everybody can stomach some of the things that once the cards are revealed. And I think that's what happened to my buddy Maurice. He had a good life. Mom and dad was in his life, but sometimes something else is needed in that person. And he always admired my strength just because of how I grew up, and how the embarrassment things that I had. But
where did you find your strength from?
I think I found it ultimately, after the one incident in the bushes. I think I found it in my faith, in my God. My belief that at that point it's something better. But initially, prior to that, I didn't know. I don't think I had any strength. I think I was just going through the motions of just trying to deal as a young boy. My father wasn't in my life at that time, so I didn't know the quote-unquote man side of that. My mother was trying to be there. I don't blame her for much, my biological mother, because I personally believe that you have two parents. Not all the time would a mom and dad be together, married or what, but everyone has a responsibility in that child's life. My father, he reneged on his responsibility. He left it all to a mother, a woman, to raise us all. And she wasn't strong enough to do it by herself. She just wasn't strong enough to do it. And oftentimes when people feel weak inside, they covenant a drug to try to mask that or build that thing up, and I think that's what happened. Maybe, I don't know, but ultimately now, I think my belief in a higher being fuels me. I have a child from a previous relationship, a daughter, that fuels me. And my childhood fuels me. You know, knowing how being at rock bottom feels is not something that you ever want to go back again. But at the same time, it gives you the humility and the humbleness to respect everybody and to realize that not every day is promised, but if you get that day, make the best of that day. People shouldn't be judged because they may look good on the outside but can feel terrible in the inside. And some people may look terrible on the outside but feel with love and generosity in the inside. So I've learned to not be judgmental from those experiences. But I think the biggest piece, I'm humbled in that, you know, and ultimately now serving in the school district. And
You're probably working with a lot of children who you've seen in your career who have a lot of your own struggles in their own personal lives.
Oh, absolutely. You know, here I'm new to this district, so learning the different perils for this district, I'm still learning, but certainly at my previous school districts that I worked in, yeah, I was really involved with that. And I worked closely with young males because I identified that struggle best because I was that same young man to know how that deal with. And hearing their stories and their testimonies, which match some of my testimonies.
Do you think it gives you a different perspective as an educator?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. You know, education has become a big business in some areas. The human side sometimes is hard to display, but I think when you make decisions in any critical position that you have, from school teacher or up, you have to make decisions, and when you work in the school, the decision has to be what best supports young people, students. That's why we're here. And you know, I have to make some of those hard decisions, but I have to make sure that I do not compromise students. And not only that comes from my rearing, but it comes from me being an educator.